for my strengths finder.
Hey, security peeps, we are here having a good time already live again in our special edition, the Super Recruiter series. And I am the Super Recruiter for today. And Chris is our honorary Super Recruiter. And we have Alicia Couri back with us. So as you all know, I'm Renee Small, Breaking Into Cybersecurity podcast series. This is a special edition where we will have discussions with Alicia around assessments. And Alicia was here last week, and she's going to be, I'll have her jump in a second. But Chris, say hi to everyone.
Hey, everyone.
My co-host and brother from another mother. And Alicia, say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone.
So
I'm excited to be back.
I know. Last week was so much. I mean, there was so much engagement, and people had such a good time. They wanted to learn all about what you did. So Alicia, jump right in, talk to us about about what you do, assessments, and how they're being used in companies right now for interviewing and for just leadership development, things like that.
Great. Thank you again for having me back. I'm so excited, that people invite me back. That means I actually did something of value. So my name is Alicia Couri, as you said, and I am a Colby certified consultant, and we use Colby. It's an assessment tool that really identifies your actions based on your instinctive strengths. So there are three parts to the mind. There's the cognitive, which is the thinking, the affective, which is the feeling, and then the conative, which a lot of people don't know about, which is the doing. How do you do what you do? And that is really instinctive to you, how you solve problems and strive. And so with Colby, what we do with companies is we're able to really identify those innate strengths that you have. And through the hiring process, we can really let you know if the person you're looking to hire will execute what you need them to execute. A lot of times people will want a job, they're very motivated to get a job, and they will look good, they will say all the right things, they'll be like the superstar, and then 6 months later, you're like, what happened? What happened? We thought you were such an amazing recruit for us, because the motivation that they had to get the job started waning. And what you're left with is their action mode. How are they going to take action? And if that's not in alignment with the actual job that you have for them, then there could be opportunities to overcome. You start getting overwhelmed in your job, you start getting stressed, you start getting fatigued, and you're not performing at your optimum anymore. So in the hiring process, it's really great to do this type of conative assessment, because then you really will pinpoint if someone will do what you need them to do. In the leadership side of it, if you need someone to understand, if you need, you want to promote someone into leadership, you want to create that opportunity for them. Again, if you're shifting them from one type of action, let's use an example of someone who is a top-notch salesperson, and they're out there and they're selling and they're a rock star. And now you want them to be in the office as a manager of salespeople. And now you switch their role from actually doing the sales, being out there and being out in the field, to sitting behind a desk and doing paperwork. You have actually changed their action mode. And now if that doesn't line up with them, suddenly this superstar rock star that you had as a salesperson, you're like, why aren't they a good leader? Why can't they were so great at what they did, but you inadvertently switched the actions that they have to do, and not really know that whether or not they'd be good at paperwork, whether
Right.
they would be good at being in an office all day and training people. So it's really valuable to know where someone's innate skills are, where their innate strengths are, so that you can really position them to be the best, the most productive, and give you the highest performance that they can give you, and they'll be happier, healthier, and so much more productive. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we do.
Right. And I know that you described what tends to happen a lot, especially with technology professionals. If, and as you know, we're in the cybersecurity space, but if you're really, really, really great technically at what you do, what tends to happen is you do get promoted. So you do a phenomenal job as whatever you're doing technically. The manager, the leader, says, the executive says, oh, wow, Chris is amazing. Let's bring him up and move him into managing other people. But Chris's real strength is doing the thing, managing the people. He doesn't like to do that. He's not interested in timesheets and paperwork and all that kind of stuff. He wants to do his, what he does best. Mm-hmm. And so we see that happening a ton. And what are the things that I really like about what organizations have done over the years is sometimes the only way to grow would be to have to go into managing people. But in the technology space, they have great tracks now where you can go up you can still be a senior technologist, like get more and more and more, have a deeper strength and go up the ladder, so to speak.
Right.
Space, but just stay technical. You're just getting more and more proficient in what,
and that's where your value really is. You become a master at what you do in that space. And even if you do promote them to leading a team of people, understanding the team dynamics is so valuable. That's another really benefit of Colby, is understanding team dynamics, so that now they're not the only one trying to manage all this stuff. If someone on your team is really that follow-through person that will be great at the paperwork, well, they can be assigned the timesheets and the paperwork and doing those things, because that's where their strength lies, when your strength might lie in actually training other people how to do what you do, and all that other stuff is.
And then I would differentiate between being a manager and being a leader. So being a leader is understanding the team dynamics, helping to motivate people to do what needs to be done. Whereas sometimes being a manager is doing all the managerial stuff, like the timesheets and the paperworks. And there's people that hate doing that, but you're good at everything else. You're good at the doing, you're good at leading the people, but you're not good at the minutia that tends to come with that level of responsibility.
Exactly. And understanding that is who you're working with, either giving them more latitude to get it done, or allowing them the opportunity to have someone who that really is in their wheelhouse to do, allowing that shared work to be done so that it is getting done, and it's getting done at a high level, because that's really where their strength lies. So if that's really where someone's strength lies, they will do it so much faster than you would do it. It'll take you probably all day to slough through all of it, and it'll take them like an hour to get all of it done. And so really understanding how to manage that time and how to manage those opportunities is where Colby gives you that insight, so that you can delegate things more effectively.
So one of the things that you mentioned, or that the conversation that I was having, that was happening before we went live, was in COVID, with either diminishing budgets and reducing team size, how do you best allocate the remaining work amongst the rest of the people? And you mentioned that Colby can help with that, but what are some of the best ways for managers to understand what are the instinctual backbones of a task, so that they could best assign it?
That's a good thing, because with Colby, there are 3 assessments. There is the A assessment, which is the personal assessment you take on yourself to understand who you are. So that's your reality. There's a B assessment, which is what you do every day. So it's your perception of your job that you have to do every day. And then there's a C assessment, which is your manager or supervisor's perception of what you do every day. So with a manager, what we do is we do that C assessment. We have a consultation and we really drill down, what do you need this person in this position to do every day that would be success in this job? So it's up to them to really design what needs to be done to understand. And I'm not sure, but I don't think a lot of people really drill it down like that. Like they don't really sit down and think about what does success look like in this position? What do they have to do every single day, every week that has to get done? Like the actual doing, what activities need to be done that is success in this position, so that when the person comes in, they don't now start having their own perception of what it is they have to do. It's actually the job. It's not like just a vague job description. It is really laid out. And what helps with that too is that when you are interviewing for that job position, you really know what you want, what you're looking for. And then when we match that Kolbe A to that C, we get to really know, yes, this person is in alignment with what you need them to do versus, well, I think they can do the job, you know. So you really now have someone not just qualified by their resume, not just you get along well in the interview, but you know that they're going to do the tasks that need to be done. So that Kolbe C is very, very vital for managers and leaders and supervisors to be able to drill down the exact tasks that this job will be successful in this job.
I'm sure Renee sees this all the time with managers not knowing exactly what
Like
needs to be in their job description, what they need from a person, like all these things.
You know what's fascinating? I put up a post this week and asked for people's comments and questions around what they want to learn more about. And one of the things that came up was around job descriptions and what managers look for. And consistently, people tend to blame HR. They're always like, oh, HR needs job descriptions. And I am working on right now, I'm going to do a presentation on this live. I'm trying to do it this week, but it'll probably end up being next week, where we can walk through what really happens. Like the manager writes the job description. The leader writes the job description. HR is at the end of the process. HR is like, okay, I came to HR and it's done, it's baked. And then HR can help tweak it, kind of look over it again, make sure, add in certain verbiage, make sure it has the right language, that kind of stuff. But overall, HR isn't sitting around writing job descriptions.
But I know what happens. As a busy manager, you go out on the internet and you research a generic job description and you copy and paste it, and you're like, I don't have time to do the rest of it. Let HR tweak it and address it, and then nothing happens, and the cycle just continues.
For real.
So no one's really looking at what is the result that we need to happen on a daily, weekly, monthly, you know, what does success really look like? And then let's work it backwards. Let's really see what tasks need to be done on a monthly basis, a weekly basis, a daily basis. And then that becomes your job description of what you actually have to do in your job.
Right. So Ben says, do you recommend occasionally retaking these sorts of personality tests? Do results differ for the same person over time? That's a great question.
That's a great question, because I can make the distinction. This is not a personality test. So personality tests do change from time to time based on where you are in your life and what your experiences have been. So something that was really, really important for you in your 20s when you were working in your 40s may not be the same priority that you have, and even in the position that you're in. So you may need to harness, like strength finders have, what is it, 30 strengths, but your top 5 shift based on where you are and what needs you have at that time. So you can pull something else within your top 10. Those top 10 will probably rotate a lot. The Kolbe assessment is not a personality assessment. It is a cognitive assessment. It's been around for 40 years, and it has been validated. And the test retake statistics is a 1 to 2 variable. Very it's very seldom that someone will actually jump an action mode from resistance to initiating. Where you are is typically where you'll be. And like I said, it's like a 1 to 2 point variable over a 40-year span. People, they've had like a control group retake the test every 10 years, and it hasn't really changed that much. So when you take it, who you are, even if you took it as a child, they don't recommend taking it until you're in high school, but from that age onward, you're pretty much, your action mode is your action mode. These are your instincts. This is how you will always look to solve problems. This is the pattern, the predictable pattern that you will have. So someone who is let's say, counteracting quick start, which means you're a stabilizer. You always look for stability. You're always the one that looks at what's working and keeping that working. You will not become someone who is a risk taker generally. So you may take risks once in a while in your life, but generally you won't become that ideation person, that person that's always looking to move and change and switch up and take chances and take risks. That doesn't happen.
So Alicia, you said what age? At what age?
High school, well, they can do it from, I think, 13 and up. Mm-hmm. They typically recommend that you do it in high school. Mm-hmm. That way, where you are in high school, and then when you start working, there you kind of already have a benchmark of what your skill, I don't want to use the word skill, what your strengths are, because it's very different, what your instincts are.
I've heard some people say kindergarten teachers know, they know kids from kindergarten. You know,
well, I'm glad you said that, because Kathy Colby, who developed this system, she was a teacher, a school teacher, and that's where she saw it. Her father was the Wunderlich, her maiden name was Wunderlich. So her father started the Wunderlich assessment, which is a cognitive assessment. And being that she had dyslexia, severe dyslexia, she always felt that there was another way to measure someone's strength other than your cognitive strength, other than cognitive. So as a school teacher, she started noticing that when she gave kids stuff to do and they didn't have any kind of direction or instruction, they would always solve the problem the same. Like each kid will always, they had a go-to every single time. And she started to track that go-to. She's like, this one would solve it this way. This one would solve it this way. And that's kind of where that came from. What is your instinct to solve problems? And she started doing a lot of research into the cognitive part of the mind.
Very interesting. Okay. So for, I think it's most for me, but I'm going to go down. Hold on one second here. People are asking about, so Ben says, thank you for the answer and clarification of the type of assessment. So there's some questions here that are mostly kind of focused on, HR related stuff, which is fine. So I'll jump in. Gilberto wants to know, he says, I've been technically minded and have held a couple of technical positions. I'm trying to now break into cybersecurity, have had a couple of interviews, but thinks his lack of experience in that specific field is hindering him from getting in the door. He thinks because he's pretty eager to get in the field, it probably shows, and he's not speaking as confidently. So I think he's getting nervous. So he said he knows he would excel, but communicating that is the hard part. Do we think that hiring managers take that into account? So I'll answer this. I think that there are managers, everyone knows that people are nervous on interviews. Like interviewing people, most people aren't just professional interviewers going out there and interviewing over and over again. And even the ones that do interview can't
I do this every day.
Can get caught up in interviewing. And so the one thing I would say, Gilberto, is that remember that an interview is a two-way conversation. So it's not, you want to have questions prepared for, you want to be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, and thinking about it as like tossing a ball back and forth. So if you're playing tennis and the ball is going back and forth, and you're kind of asking them more about their culture, what's happening inside of their organization, how the leader leads. And I think that the more interviewing is just nerve-wracking. It is what it is. And I know people try to put their best foot forward, but the best interviews are when you're going back and forth and the managers are talking too. You don't want to feel like it's not an interrogation. Like
it's not an interrogation. It's not an interrogation.
I look at it like talking to a friend. So I pretend that manager is possibly a future friend. So I want to be comfortable with them, have that conversation back and forth. And practice makes perfect. So if it means you have that mock interview with your friend who's pretending to be a hiring manager, or one of your peers that understands the search that you're going through, I think that will help. Because oftentimes I know they don't engage in those types of conversations until it's the interview. So it might be once every 4 or 5 years or once every 2 or 3 years. But that's a long time not to have practice. So have practices on a regular basis. Treat your one-on-ones like an interview. Treat all sorts of different events in your life like an interview, and then it just becomes normal for you.
Yeah. Can I also chime in a second? Because I also believe that when you really understand what you bring to the table, whether you have experience in it or not, when you understand, and I'm not just talking about your cognitive strengths, because that's important too, because when you understand what you are innately wired to do, and you can articulate those strengths, and you can also articulate other strengths that you have. So you know what you're bringing to the table for this organization, and it is a benefit for them when you can see yourself as, listen, it would be so valuable to them to have me on their team. You really approach it from a different perspective. And I'm not saying it in an arrogant way or in a cocky way, but in a self-assured way, that whether you get that opportunity, whether they offer you that job or not, they know you're leaving this interview, them knowing, listen, this guy or this girl brings XYZ to the table. Maybe this position's not right for them, but something else might come up that they'll say, you know what? We interviewed such and such a couple weeks ago. They'll be perfect for this. So always leave them feeling like you would be such a value to them, even if not for this position, because now you're becoming top of mind to them, and not maybe for this position, but something else might come up that you'll be the first person they call. So don't be nervous. Really understand who you are and the strengths that you have that you bring to the table.
And also have that conversation with them too, where you acknowledge that, hey, you might not be the right fit, but these are the other skills that you bring to this. If they don't have a role right now, think of them for the future. Like, if you feel during that interview that it's not the best fit for you, not the best fit for them, it's time to have that conversation. Like, hey, I really like the company. I really like the culture. I really like what the mission behind this organization is. And it sounds like we're not clicking on this particular position, but I'm still interested in having conversations about other roles. And then that's how you can open up that conversation.
You're absolutely right. It goes to Louis is asking a question. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Louis Awa. He says, most technical interview ask questions on topics they're prolific, but not part of. I know Chris has to jump. Bye, Chris. Mm-hmm. So Louis says, most technical interviews are asking questions on topics that they're prolific, but not part of the job description. How do you want to approach that? And it's kind of the same thing, you know, what Alicia was just saying, like, you want to make sure, and Chris, you want to make sure that you are sharing what your strengths are, clarifying the questions. Sometimes they ask questions and you might not understand fully what they're looking for.
Ask for instance. Give me an example of what you're
Give me an
talking about so that
example.
you have context for what it is that they're actually asking.
It's a great point. I'm huge on that. I live by examples. Like, explain it to me. Give me an example. However way you process information, you want to be able to ask them, what do they mean? You want to make sure that you're answering the right question. So these are all, like, really good questions.
Yeah, clarity and communication in an interview is very, very important, because like you said, they might ask a technical question and their terminology in their culture might be different than the terminology that you just came from. So they may say something that you don't understand, but you've done it 100 times, just that you don't really understand the way that they're explaining it to you. So
that happened with a candidate I was dealing with last week. Exact same situation. The way that the leader in this one particular group had a different definition of it was vulnerability management, had one specific definition of it. And then this person came around and that person didn't have that same definition. And then as the interview went on, he's like, wait a minute, I do that every day. He circled back at the end and said, this is what I do every day. Like, oh, this is what you're talking about. So definitely making sure that you get that clarity around what people, people call different things.
They use the same for 5 different things
all the time. All the time.
Sometimes people tell me something, they say, oh, have you ever heard of such and such a term? And I'm like, no. And then when they start explaining, it's like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, but we call it this. So
right. Yeah, absolutely. So Gilberto thinks that awesome advice, especially the conversational aspect, that piece may be missing. So he's happy. And Sergi says, great advice on the interview dynamic. Thank you. So I know interviewing is always such a tough, a tough part of the interview, of the process, of the hiring process.
Yeah.
And then especially now adding in, Alicia, I don't want,
go ahead.
Adding in this component now, like the video component, which puts another layer of, I think, nervousness, because it's one thing to, now you're looking at yourself on camera and all of that. And so we had someone come in a couple of weeks ago and talk about that as well. But go ahead, and there's another question coming in.
Oh, I was, what was I going to say now? What you say with video, if they're using Kolbe as a tool and they've asked you to take a Kolbe assessment, and then they ask you in for an interview, one of the things that you can rest assured in that process, because if they did ask you, is that you are already qualified, not just by education or by your resume, but also you're in alignment with what they need you to do. So having been called into an interview after doing your Kolbe assessment, you should feel a lot more comfortable, because it'll probably be one of 3 or 5 candidates that actually have whittled down to being in that position. So I just wanted to say that if they do use it as a hiring tool and then you do get called in for an interview, just know that you're in alignment with what it is. And now it's just a matter of personality and how you click within the team and that kind of stuff to look at the dynamics.
That's such a good point. And even without Kolbe, so in situations where there's either another assessment or there's no assessment, that's another thing to build confidence in people. When you get the interview, you're not proving, on paper you're qualified. So
they already like you.
They already have determined out of hundreds of people, you're, the 5 people.
We want to see you.
So I want people to kind of take a step back and remember that, like, getting to the interview in and of itself is
a victory.
It's a victory. Like, it is a huge deal to get the chance to be in front of this person when 200 or 300 other people, or how many other people are applying for different jobs, did not. So that goes to show that all you did, your effort in putting together your resume and all that stuff is working. It's just now kind of getting the interviewing practice down. So someone says here, okay, so Lewis says, thanks for the response. Chris before says, this is very informative. Thank you all. I wanted to go back to, there was a question. Judy, I think it was Judy. Okay, so Judy Wickens asked, how should you explain a break in your resume? And Chris responded to her, the truth is usually the best way to do it. So Judy, yeah, I would agree with Chris. Chris had written her back and said the truth is the best way to do it. So if you took a break to take care of, family members, or, for some family related emergency, to go back to school, whatever it is, I would just fill in that space with that. So if there was a gap and it was 2 years, and it's like, what were you doing? What you want to do, especially with interviewing, and with resumes in particular, is you want to take out any doubt out of a manager's mind to rule you out. You want to get ruled in and not ruled out. So I say to people all the time, to add in, like, wherever that gap is. So let's say this is 2020 and you had a job for 2 years or whatever, but then there's a gap between 2016 and 2018 where you either started a family, or you had to take care of family members, or you had a family emergency or something like that. You could just write that in there,
What about if you went to jail?
Yeah, that's a whole different, on break, on vacation. That's a whole different avenue. Goodness,
call it. I forgot what Martha Stewart called it. She went to Yale. That's what she said. She went to Yale.
Goodness gracious!
I went to Yale for 6 months.
We're really turning this into a party. Anyway, write whatever that is in like one sentence. You don't have to be, it doesn't have to be long.
You don't have to elaborate.
You don't have to elaborate. Just say, took a break for X reason, went back to school, whatever the case is for that break. So you just want that to be filled in so that they're not questioning, why is this person? Why do they have that gap? Steve says, hanging out in Belize, living off your fortune while ziplining through the jungle and drinking Coco Locos on the beach for a year or two is perfectly legitimate. I agree. 100%. I 100% agree. So Jeff Poindexter says, okay, there's a lot of comments in here. Dan Tinsley says, the number one thing I look for is to be authentic, and that can be a deciding factor. So that's another, managers say this all the time. They look for passion. They look for authenticity, for you, coming in and being yourself, because you don't want to be a different person on an interview and then you get in the job and you're a whole different, whole different person. Like, who wants that? So Dan, thank you for that comment. Thank you so much for these comments. Jeff says, many times at an interview, I feel so confident that I got the job based on my experience and on the spot feedback, only to learn shortly thereafter that I didn't get the job. What they, HR, don't tell you is why. I'm starting to ask them why, and I'm shocked most of the time. Yes, it's how you answer the questions. Most of the time, it's a problem they have in work itself, never based on my personality or experience. I feel they might think I would be boring or would be bored. I don't really know. Nice to have more results so I can improve. So Jeff, the one thing, okay, there's a couple different things when it comes to responses. You likely will not, whatever it is. So this is what I tell people all the time. There are so many deciding factors with interviewing, with jobs, with all different types of stuff, right? So, you could have a situation where companies are interviewing and they have somebody that they know that they want for the job anyway, but they got to go through the interview process. It's unfortunate, but it happens. You could have a situation where, for whatever reason, your personality, they don't feel that you would be the right fit for the team. That means all different types of things. I'll give you an example. We had a situation. I was working with a company that wanted to hire a person who was going to be getting rid of, like, pretty much moving, like, downsizing the organization. We interviewed a ton of people. Some of the people, they were really, really, nice, very competent, could do the job, everything else. This one person, for lack of better words, was like a hard ass. Like, he was just one of these people that he tried to be kind of nice, but we knew, like, underneath he was not, that person. That's the person they wanted for the job, because they knew that he was going to come in and execute and do what needed to be done. Whereas somebody else might have been like, oh, I tend to be, oh, well, let's think about this and that or whatever. Like I probably wouldn't have been the best fit for that, but this particular person was the right fit. Or if you have, I'll give a different example. And I know we got to jump soon. But in another scenario, I was in a different company and we're hiring, and we had two really seasoned, really domineering personality people on the team. And we had another opening, and the person who at the time was interviewing also had this domineering type of personality. So I went back to the leader and said, hey, this person could do the job, no question, but do you want another, do you want another person in here to be like fighting?
Just butting heads all day long.
Butting heads all day long. So even though that person was she could do the work, no question, she could do the work. The manager went with someone else who ended up being like a perfect fit for the team, much less experience, also did a great job, but just for the harmony of the team, this person's fit. So there's so many things that are involved that they cannot come out and tell you, hey, Jeff, you're a really nice guy and we need a mean person, or, like all of that. So sometimes
there aren't specifics.
There's not specifics. There's really not specifics. It's very, very, as much as you try to be objective, it's very subjective. There's so many things, and there's so many just factors going on. You may have the people like we talked about a couple of weeks ago. They have a PhD and they're applying to entry level, and the manager thinks, well, gosh, this person has a PhD. Like, why are they coming? Why are they, overqualified? Or this person was a leader, used to manage 50 people. Why do they want to come in and be an individual contributor now? They're going to come and take over.
So all these preconceived.
A lot of stuff going on in people's heads, all this stuff. So all I can say is
biases.
Just keep going. Don't worry about why not. Just keep, be your best self.
Be your best self.
Be your best self. That's all you can do. And continue, and you'll get to the company that's the right fit for you. Like for whatever reason, you'll be that fit and they'll be that fit for you, and you'll be happy versus some of these other situations. And then at least what Alicia and Chris talked about earlier is you might not be the fit for this role, but a different role that shows up, you could be a fit for that. So that's my advice when it comes like that. So Chris talks about, sounds like having multiple alpha personalities on one team. Yeah. You can't have like
too much. You can't. And that's one of the things too with Colby is team dynamics. We work really, really diligently on team dynamics to make sure that teams are functioning very synergistically, and we don't have that kind of conflict happening within teams, to make sure we bring those mediator people type strengths in a team so that we have balance and synergy in teams, so that we're always productive and not butting heads.
Right. So Chris, Tony says, Judy, I'm going to go back to Judy. Judy says, family matters, but people may question loyalty to the company. So then that's not the right company. So Judy, if they are concerned with you taking time off to take care of your family or whatever it is that you have done, and is that the type of manager that you want to work for? If you're something happens to grandma and you got to take time off, like, are they going to be flexible? There's tons of companies are built up of people on the inside. And if they are questioning that, then I would say
it's not the right fit.
Do you want that job? Not the right fit. So,
because like you said earlier, you're interviewing them too. Don't just make this a one-way street where they're interviewing you to see if you fit. You also interview them and the culture that there is there and the opportunities that's there for you to grow and develop in the organization as well. You want to know that you're going in and that you have growth potential there too. That this isn't like, there's a glass ceiling and I can't go anywhere from here. So you want to also be in that position of understanding the company, understanding the job. What is management like? What is leadership like? Do they train you to be better at your job? Find out all those things. What opportunities are there? So are they going to give you time off if something happens to your family members? You interview them too. Like Renee said, you find out what kind of company it is. And if you'll fit into there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm having
Fridays. That's important to you.
Exactly. I mean, it's so true. I was talking to a lady earlier this week, and she sent the question, what is your company, the company that I'm working with, what are you all doing in terms of COVID-19? How are you supporting your employees? Those are valid questions. I mean, she's spot on. What's the company doing? How are you protecting your employees? So, okay. So Chris says, piggybacking off of my story, he has seen teams with 3 or 4 alpha types, or type A personalities, and needless to say, it was a disaster. Yeah, you don't want to be in that. If you're the alpha, you don't want to be with 3, 4 more alphas. Like, that's literally dogs barking all day. Like, that's just pure headbutting all day long. And it's you think about, Dan talks about this, totally unproductive. So Dr. Dan comes on Mondays. He talks about teams. He works with a lot of professional athletes. There's one quarterback. There's one, there's a certain amount of, he always does the football analogies. I know Angelique is a big football analogy person too.
Me too.
And Alicia too. So, you think about teams just in general, and we tend to not bring it to the corporate side, but sports teams, everybody plays a position. So this is the same thing. So when you're interviewing, kind of think of it like that, like everyone's kind of playing a specific position, and you don't want to be in a situation, even though it's defeating. I get it. I mean, I totally get it. You want them to like you. You want the job, you think it's the right fit for you, all that good stuff. But I am telling you, it is so not about you, although it kind of is about you, but there's so many factors. I think I'm just going to do a live stream on like all types of scenarios that happen behind the scenes. I really do. Because I think people
getting hired.
Yeah. This like so
you don't move there blaming yourself or feling that you're inadequate or you weren't good enough.
Bad.
A lot of times it's nothing about, like when you break up in a relationship and they say it's not you, it's me.
So true.
A lot of times it is them and it's not you. Sometimes they don't even have their stuff together. Like we talked about earlier about knowing what the position even is. Yeah. Sometimes they don't even have all of that together.
No,
and
they don't.
Into a hornet's nest. You don't want to walk into a hot mess or something either.
So true. So Tony says, great stuff, but the rules are constantly changing and being written as we go. That is the truth, Tony. I agree. So, Alicia, we are at 42 minutes. Goodness gracious.
Yeah. So that's why that for me is really important too. I'm having really tight job descriptions is really important. So those rules they're not fluctuating all the time, and it's not based on preference and all of that. Kolbe really reduces preferences, it reduces biases, it reduces all of that, unless they really have someone in mind for the job already, and regardless of what happens, they're going to hire them anyway. Kolbe is really one of those tools that removes all those barriers.
So if you want to connect with Alicia, how do I'm tagging you in the post. I'm going to tag you. I've been tagging you in here so they know about you. Like we said before, the Kolbe has been used. I mean, there's multiple different assessments out there. If you've been around, especially somebody like me in HR, we've done all different types of strengths finders. There's one called Hogan. There's another one. Myers-Briggs. There's tons of them. So Alicia is focused in the Kolbe space. If you want to connect with Alicia, I'm going to tag her in here. Is there anything else you want to say, Alicia, before we wrap?
Just that in response to COVID-19, if there are companies that are reducing labor forces and trying to figure out how to really balance the workforce that they have with the tasks that need to be done, using Kolbe to help you streamline that would be very, very effective for you to really get you up and running. And if you're looking to hire new people and hire teams, again, using Kolbe assessments to help in that hiring process and really drill it down to getting the right people for the positions, that is something that my company does for organizations to really get you productive quickly, instead of trying to figure it all out now that everything's kind of been tossed up in the air and trying to find a place to land. So they can contact me here on LinkedIn. They can connect with me or go to alicia360.com and connect with me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you all, everyone. Thank you so much for this engagement. There's so many awesome questions and comments. And we will see you tomorrow. We have someone coming in. Yeah, we have.
Thank you so much, Renee, by the way, for bringing
absolutely. No, we want to, be able to provide this information, like, for people, especially during right now, like everyone's.
I know, and you can individually take an assessment too. Don't feel like the company has to give it to you. You can understand your own strengths. You can get coaching around what it is you do best, most instinctively as well. So you can do your Kolbe. Just connect with me and I can give you some more information about that.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, folks. See you all here tomorrow, 11-ish. And I joke around 11-ish because who knows if my kids don't let me be exactly at 11. So see you all tomorrow. Bye, Alicia. Thank you.
Bye, Renee. Thanks.
Bye.